one of the top 3 reasons why AI is failing is employee sabotage. The employees are actively sabotaging AI deployments because they don't know what they're trying. What's the benefit for them? The technology companies that have been holding us back historically, the big ones, right? Now they're playing ball too. If it was per seat, then they would be counter motivated to make your life more better. People want to go from current state to future state and not go through the middle part. It's not big PMS's data. It's your data. It's your access.
What are the things that you're finding most shocking lately from talking to facilities leaders across the country? What are kind of like your top
Well, I'll give you one good, one bad. One good.
Let's go on a positive too. I want to hear some positives as well.
There is a active motion to adopt AI at the site and at maintenance.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Let's go deeper in it.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that there is a not my words. They say people think that we're a bunch of knuckle draggers, right? But we're not. We're running the asset. We manage the asset.
Of course.
This fellow I was talking to has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. This is not a knuckle dragger by definition, right? And they are looking to improve efficiency, improve productivity, make life easier on the site. And they're looking at AI as a solution to make all that happen. And what I find really interesting is that they are held back by a lot of gaps in technology. Like the core data, the boring stuff, the data and the policies and the SOPs and the processes, they're all really lumpy when it comes down to maintenance and capital. And so their point is that, well, we've automated leasing, we've automated PA work, right? Or PMA work, sorry. Now what's next? And I think that there's a real motion this year, well, at least I'd say in the last 4 weeks, I've had more people say I'm actively looking for a maintenance AI solution.
Okay.
Which is really encouraging on the positive side, and that's coming from the maintenance leaders.
I want to dig more into that, when they're saying, how do they describe this? I mean, because they have to have an idea of what would this, look like to them, what would ideally look like.
Yeah.
Because if we're just saying a maintenance AI solution, man, it could be just about anything.
Well,
right?
Of course, and I think that that's the part that as our job as sellers or vendors, we need to help figure out what is the right solution for you, and be okay to defer, to say, hey, that's not us.
Yeah, but from the conversations with you conversations, how do they envision that? What's the definition of that?
Well, I would go to your point, no one is articulating a vision statement of what it looks like. They're leading with their problems. And the problems that everyone seems to have it within scope, or at least they understand that it's scopable, is intake and work order creation, response, speed, quality, cost. I want to improve my time to respond. I want to manage the 24/7 gaps that we've got within our organization. I want my work orders to be better quality so that my people aren't spending the first 45 minutes of the day figuring out what they've got to do today. Because that's 1/8 of their time, right? So if I'm thinking that's almost 4 to 5 hours a week I'm losing to just figure out what to do. And that's all going away. So all those downtimes, those are all starting to become priority targets. And then people are starting to understand or see that it is a workflow chain of events, and that chain of events has a lot of natural failure points to it. Intake, triage, assignment, troubleshooting assignment. If there's a vendor, how do we manage that? Managing spend authority and all that kind of stuff. Do we have the right parts? Parts is a big, huge one. Where are the parts? Are they the right parts? All that is kind of is becoming the next order of the conversation. But I think first of all, everyone's saying, hey, I think we can solve intake. I think we can solve triage. I think we can solve 24/7, and I think we can solve troubleshooting. I realize that Now, to be actively seeking it, this goes to our conversation earlier about the budget and authority to spend, right? I think that we're lucky in that the people that are maybe in our network, they're starting to have influence on decision making. And because leasing's been done, and because there's been some success in centralization, and the gap in maintenance centralization has been the lack of appropriate technology to do it. And so maybe that's one reason, or there's the successes in it. Either way, there is an appetite for change. And it feels like the minds, in some cases, are around the table to be able to make that change happen. So it's pretty exciting times. And I'll also say, this is probably the most interesting part, is that the technology companies that have been holding us back historically, Yardi, Appfolio, Entrada, the big ones, right? RealPage, now they're playing ball too. And I find it really interesting. So Yardi introduced their MCP server last fall before Optech. Appfolio is launching theirs this week at NAA. And
tell me more, describe this, I'm not familiar with the notion. So
sure. So like a MCP server is an Anthropic, it's a Claude integration, I guess I'll call it, where you can expose certain types of data to other systems and other agents. And so what's funny is like also what's interesting is that Yardi started with maintenance to expose maintenance data through their MCP server, and they kind of working towards more of their compliance type related data. And now Anthropic is launched, put the press release out on Friday. And so I think that what we're seeing, so what I'm getting at is that in terms of maintenance, the companies that have been criticized by me as well for being really conservative with the data and integrations are now embracing data.
They're trying to hog the data and just like use that as a moat. Is that what you meant?
You bet. Yeah, I would say that's a better way of putting it. They've been rewarded for hogging the data and making it hard to work with your own data. Now, I've been trying to use this language lately when I'm talking to customers about it's not big PMS's data, it's your data. It's your access. So we're seeing more creative, or I'll say a reimagination of what business the large PMSs are in. And they're realizing that if they were to try to gate access to their customers' data, that's going to hurt their ability to sell more licenses, number one. And number two, they have it is impossible to innovate at the rate of innovation that's happening for the edge cases and for agents. They're going to provide a basic horizontal solution, but they're not going to be the best in class for those verticals, which gives spaces for people to become best in class at procurement.
Point solution.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can have point solutions that are, depending on the perspective, they're vertical in nature. So those can be procurement, like we talked about earlier, category management, like we talked about earlier, leasing, well documented, maintenance, the business that we're in, right? All those depth of data type decision making is going to be enabled by an agentic approach to solving these problems. And everyone knows the PMSs have to play ball, but they weren't necessarily motivated to do it before because there wasn't the threat. And I really believe that they're recognizing that they can make a lot of money, 10 times the money that they could make by gaining the data, by making the data accessible. And they're going to
explain to me that some more, because in my mind is, if I'm Yardi, let's just take Yardi.
We'll use Yardi as an example, sure.
Yeah, we could use Entrada, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we got to use a name for the sake of using a name, right?
Appreciate that, yeah.
Just so we have a name. So if I'm Yardi, right, I'm looking at how do I grow my company? How do I cater to my stakeholders, whoever they are, right? People that are invested in a company. So by growing the company, by selling more, right?
Yeah.
So how do I sell more? Well, I could sell to more clients. This is one way. I could increase my client base. which is hard, right?
Yep.
Because you're facing the cost of switching as a huge bump in the road, right? In other words, clients that already, because everybody has a PMS system, or 90% of the companies do.
If you've got a loan, you do. If you have a loan, you have a PMS.
So everybody that's not a client of mine, it's a client of my competitors. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm trying to make them switch from whomever they're using to Yardi, right? The biggest challenge that I'm gonna have, and it's like an incredibly serious challenge, is that the cost of switching, and that's the number one reason why clients don't switch.
Right.
PMSs. All the training, all the cost involved, all the human.
Yeah.
It's a long list of things that are associated with it. So,
yes.
Okay, so this is very hard. Not impossible, it's very hard. So this is one way. The second way is to sell more to my existing clients.
Yes.
And how do I sell more? Well, I create more things, I add more things to my suite.
Yep.
And most of these, large PMS companies are very well known for doing a meal piece, doing selling you a core product.
Yeah.
And then if you need any type of features extra, they will charge you for everything extra.
Yeah.
And it could end up becoming, very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So if I'm giving this out and allowing, Vendoroo, or I'm allowing, Upwork to integrate because, they're best in class on the point solution that they developed, it means that I'll have less opportunity to sell my clients on the maintenance suite that I developed.
Yep.
Although it's just very basic, I could still make extra income. And what motivates me to say, I'm just gonna let this go. I'm gonna let them integrate with me and let them make the money instead of me making the money. So what's the?
Well, I think
what's the play there?
Yeah, I mean, so first thing, it goes back to the very beginning of how they're priced, right? So Yardi, for example, commercial prices on square feet, and residential prices on per door. Which I know there's a lot of writing about that, but it isn't. What it's not is it's not per user or per seat. So that's an important thing because they're if it was per seat, then they would be counter motivated to make your life more better, right? So they are, because it's per door per square foot. That's a good enough starting point. So they're motivated with growth of your business because if you're going to add more doors, then they're going to get more revenue for your existing customers, right? First thing. So they're going to try to find customers that are seeking to grow. Now, how can they begin to create more revenue from their existing customers? Well, they can help their existing customers grow their businesses because that'll grow their revenue. They can begin to introduce other types of products, and this is where we're starting to see this, like how much, who is it? Is it RealPage that has the payments module? I can't remember. I think it's one of them. One of them has a payments solution, and they make substantial amount of revenue by managing payments, right? You've got people that don't want to do it or are disincentivized. You might find some saboteurs in your organization. If you've got process that's ill-defined or poorly understood, you're going to be automating shit. If you have technology, like if you're trying to go from paper and pen to AI, you're going to have some gaps that you need to close. And then ultimately, if your data is not captured correctly or it's not in the right space, you're going to have complications in accelerating with AI. So now that sounds like, but everybody has those 4 problems all the time. What you can do is you can begin to make the problem smaller to where you have a higher degree of confidence in those 4 little aspects and ultimately gain confidence in your ability to deploy it. And then work with the team that has deployed the technology before. Because I assure you at Vendoroo, and I'll say my 25 years of deploying technology experience, it was never right the first time. We learned so much in the first go live in my first year, like years ago. And at Vendoroo, we learned the same story. First 50 implementations were a heavy lift. But now we are constantly iterating on optimizing the deployment and implementation experience. So that would be my two biggest takeaways, is that understand this, it will reveal your weaknesses in your organization, and prepare for that so that you can make the problem smaller to be successful.
Here's what I'm hearing from executives all the time, right? We're known as an industry that's slow to adopt new technology, especially like AI. It's still like very new, right? It's like 3 years ago, AI was not around really, to the public knowledge, in a public arena, right? As a general conversation. And what they're saying is that we don't have enough information to make those decisions. Like, we don't know what to choose, what type of product, what type of what works with our existing stack. What do we do with this stack once we adopt AI? What type of AI? What should AI do? What's our level of involvement? So I think that leads to a very strong case to be made that the prop tech companies aren't spending enough time to educate the buyer. And I will say this, it's kind of like there's two different situations. First of all, you have the situation with a very large operator, right? Top 50 management company, that most of those companies have a chief technology officer, right? That oversees technology. However, this person is not really like an AI expert. To my knowledge, most of the ones that I know, what I've seen, what I heard talking, they're experts in something else, systems, hardware, other things, right? So they're looking at the overall tech stack, but they're not experts in AI. This could change, or probably in some companies might have changed already, but as a general rule, that's not the case. So then, how do we, how do you actually educate that particular role to better understand what is that, the direction they're gonna take? And then you have the smaller companies, they can't afford to hire a chief technology officer. They don't even have that. And there's like various people in the organization going on their own, trying to do research. Chief, CEO, the COO of the company, and a couple of others, they might have like a director of technology, but nothing that, no one that's, I'll say, qualified as an expert in this technology. So in my mind, how can we expect them to embrace technology and actually make an educated decision in purchasing and adopting new technology if there's not enough information out there for them to kind of like to educate themselves and understand what they're buying and how that's going to work and affect their organization? So what's your take on that?
As a vendor, it's part of our job. If you're not teaching, you're just talking, right? And unfortunately, even talkers sell deals too. So like that just happens. There is a chance, and we call this testing your champion on the seller side, but you should be skeptical as a buyer, and you should test your seller and ask questions, ask commitments that have solid data-driven outcomes and objectives. And there's nothing squirmier than a seller who's trying to tell you what they think might happen with your business. And so it's fair as a buyer to test your seller about the afters, what you're gonna get after you do this, number one. And number two, ask them how they get there.
So in my mind, you have software doing that. You don't have category managers. You could have an AI agent. You invest your AI agent with the power of becoming a category manager. You give him a name, or her a name, and that's your category manager. Like, you don't need to hire humans.
Completely.
And, once they're properly trained, right, to understand the task at hand.
Oh yeah.
You do that for almost like no cost.
Now this brings up the negative thing that I'm hearing. Okay. Is that people want to go from current state to future state and not go through the middle part. So, I was talking about 3 reasons why you should not implement AI. That's kind of what I'm talking about in NAA this week. and you actually put this bug in my ear 2 years ago at Blueprint. If you can't possibly outsource that job, you probably shouldn't be automating it or centralizing it or putting AI on it. And what I mean by that is that if you were to go and jump from no category management at all to AI-driven category management, you're going to have a tough transition. So you got to kind of like set it up where you have people doing the work at first, so you can figure out how the work works, and then but with the design intention to put it under AI, which gets us to the second thing that we found that why you should not implement AI is if you don't have your people. Our number one reason why AI, or one of the top 3 reasons why AI is failing is employee sabotage. The employees are actively sabotaging AI deployments because they don't know what they're trying, what's the benefit for them, you know? And so they refuse to adopt, they don't show up at training, they don't give you the information right on time. Projects deployments slow down because the information isn't flowing freely or captured. So there's the first step is that the information doesn't exist, meaning the policies isn't there, how to do the job, how to be a category manager doesn't exist. Number 2, when you go to build it, the category managers themselves or people who have a stake in the status quo refuse to sabotage the implementation. And then finally, the thing that we're seeing is just that the people aren't very good.